Hi, I'm Verity. My whole family laughed when they thought I still took the bus, but they didn't know I was the one who paid for their wedding, their mortgage, even their medical bills, quietly, without applause. And when I finally pulled up in a $400,000 Rolls-Royce, they stood there frozen. Not because they were surprised I had it, but because they never thought I'd show up at all. Why is it that the ones you love the most are always the first to erase you? End with a quiet pause. Let the audience sit with that question. Then, do you want to hear what happened next? The smell of grilled steak mixed with hints of white wine hit me before I even stepped onto the patio. The Langdons always hosted dinner outdoors in early fall, just enough of a breeze to feel elegant, not cold. White lights crisscrossed above the long table, anchored at either end by potted hydrangeas that Marae changed out every season. Everything was carefully arranged, just like her family. I hesitated for a beat near the sliding glass door, hand resting on the handle. I could already hear them. Kane's booming laugh, Celine's exaggerated, "Oh my God," Rhett's quieter chuckle buried under it all. I stepped out and nobody noticed, or if they did, they didn't show it. Marae caught my eye first. "Oh, Verity, there you are," she said, already mid-pour into her wineglass. "We weren't sure if you were coming. You didn't respond to the group text." I smiled, tight. I wasn't in the group text. That earned me a blink, a shrug, then back to her pouring. Kane leaned back in his seat, eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Still taking the bus, V?" he said, smirking like it was the funniest thing he'd said all night. The table erupted in laughter. Celine nearly choked on her wine. Rhett slapped the table. Marae shook her head as if to say, "That's just Kane." I sat down at the far end, opposite everyone. My seat was slightly off balance on the uneven deck, but no one offered to switch. I placed my cloth napkin on my lap slowly, smoothing it out with hands that trembled just a little. I didn't answer Kane. I didn't need to. Let them laugh. I reached for my water, nodding as if the joke didn't bother me. As if it wasn't the same joke I'd heard since college, the same damn line every holiday, every birthday, every wedding or funeral. It wasn't even about the bus. It was about their image of me, the poor one, the afterthought. As the plates clinked and conversation shifted toward Kane's promotion and Celine's latest art gallery, I let my eyes wander to the mantel just beyond the sliding glass door. A new family photo sat in a sleek silver frame. Everyone dressed in whites and soft blues, smiling on the beach. I remembered that shoot. The wind was brutal, my dress kept flying up, and Celine had made some comment about how I should have worn Spanx. But that's not what made my chest tighten. In the photo, I was cropped, not entirely gone, just pushed to the edge, shoulder barely in frame. Everyone else, Kane, Rhett, Celine, their spouses, even Celine's dog, was perfectly centered. It wasn't just forgetting, it was editing, framing the family they preferred. That realization didn't sting like it used to. Not anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. I was there, but not really. "Celine just got a piece into that gallery in Fairfield," Marae said, lifting her wine glass like it was a toast. "Isn't that something? They only accept 8 artists a year." "Oh, stop," Celine said, grinning. "Mom, you're making it a thing." "It is a thing," Kane added. "You're legit now." They all nodded. Rhett chimed in about his daughter getting into dance classes, then Kane, again on his team expanding at work. I waited, just for a second, just in case. Nothing. They didn't mention the property deal I closed last month, worth more than any of them had seen in a year, or the award from the Women's Finance Network, or the expansion I'd led across 2 states. I didn't want a parade, just acknowledgement. I reached for my glass again, kept my face still, my smile neutral, my voice unused. Celine looked over at me. "You're quiet, V. Still working with—" What was it again? She knew exactly what it was. "Investment strategy," I said calmly. "Still helping people make money they'll never thank you for." That earned a pause. Not long, but enough. "Must be nice," Kane muttered. "Bet the bus rides keep you humble." Marae sipped her wine. "Nothing wrong with public transportation. It builds character." That was her go-to line. I could almost mouth it with her. I looked around the table. Same faces, same hierarchy, same script. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel small in it. They laughed, just like they always did. But this time, I didn't flinch, because in 5 minutes, they'd remember me. So I sat there, sipping my water, ignoring Kane's smirk and the knowing glances passed around like appetizers. I gave them 5 minutes, just 5, to let their performance end. They didn't know what was coming, and for once, I didn't warn them. That night, driving home through the winding roads of Westport, the air smelled like pine and burnt charcoal from someone's backyard fire pit. I turned off the music in my car. The silence felt better. My phone buzzed twice in the passenger seat, probably from a client, maybe a junior associate. I didn't check. Instead, my mind wandered to another night, one that had stayed buried for years, until Kane's voice at dinner yanked it back into focus. 8 years ago, my high school was hosting its annual Legacy Families Gala. The kind of event where they served mocktails in champagne flutes and expected you to wear a name tag declaring which prestigious Langdon you descended from. Kane had just landed a job at a boutique firm in Stamford, and Celine was still clinging to her gallery dreams. That night, Mireille insisted we all attend as a show of unity, even me. I remember rushing from work, late, hair in a low bun, blouse still creased from sitting at my desk. When I arrived, the auditorium was buzzing. Every table had little calligraphy name cards. I scanned for mine and felt my heart stop. There it was. Eric Langdon, guest of Kane. Eric. Not only did they get my name wrong, they listed me as an accessory to my brother. I wasn't my own person. I wasn't even a daughter in that seating plan. Just his guest. The worst part? The card was nestled at the back table, near the staff door. I sat next to a man who managed security and a woman from catering. I smiled politely, ate the chicken marsala, and clapped when my mother took the stage to talk about raising 3 successful children. 3. After the event, I tried mentioning the name card to Mireille. She tilted her head and said, "Oh, honey, probably just a typo. Don't be so sensitive." Don't be so sensitive. The Langdon family motto, it seemed, but that wasn't where it began. No, this habit of erasing me started long before that. When I was 7, I spent 2 days working on a handmade birthday card for Mireille, watercolors, glitter glue, pressed flower petals from the garden. I wrote a poem inside. Nothing fancy, just a child's words about a mother who made grilled cheese sandwiches and sang off-key during laundry. I placed it carefully on her pillow the night before her birthday. A week later, I walked into the kitchen and saw it framed, hanging near the pantry. My heart swelled, until I saw the label beneath it. Celine, age 10. It didn't even look like her handwriting. Her name, neatly typed on a little strip of cardstock. My poem, my artwork, my affection, all attributed to someone else. I said nothing, just stood there staring. Later that night, Mireille patted my back and said, "Isn't it wonderful? Celine's always had such a sweet artistic soul." I nodded, quietly, still holding a second card I never gave her. I can't say I understood betrayal at that age, but I understood subtraction. 1 minute, something was mine. The next, it wasn't, and no one seemed to notice the difference. Back in the present, I glanced across the long patio table, watching Celine giggle at one of Rhett's dry jokes. She tossed her hair like she was still 22 and invincible. Mireille leaned toward her. "Sweetheart, did you tell them about the new exhibit opening next month, the one in Ridgefield?" "I haven't even signed the contract yet," Celine said, feigning modesty, already glowing from the attention. "I mean, it's exciting, but I don't want to jinx anything." "Oh, don't be ridiculous," Kane chimed in. "You're a Langdon. Of course they want you." That line stuck to the inside of my skull like tar. I sipped my water again, slow this time. Careful. I wasn't going to ruin the moment. That would make me petty. But I wasn't going to pretend anymore either. Funny how silence, when chosen deliberately, can feel louder than a scream. Rhett turned to me. "How's the city? Still crazy expensive?" I gave him a small smile. "Well, success has a price tag." He blinked. Mireille chuckled, but it didn't quite land, Celine smirked, eyes narrowing just slightly. That's when I knew. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't carelessness. This was curated, engineered. They hadn't just stopped seeing me. They'd worked me out of the frame entirely, like trimming the edges of a photo so only the people who fit their version of family remained. And I had let it happen. I had shown up, year after year, hoping they'd call me by the right name, remember my card, see my chair at the table as mine, not borrowed, not conditional. But maybe the real mistake wasn't theirs. Maybe it was mine, thinking I had to keep asking for a seat. What if it's not about changing them, but changing what I let them call me? The patio lights from my mother's house faded behind me as I drove, headlights slicing through the quiet streets of Westport. I passed by the elementary school where they once cheered for Kane's science fair win and Celine's fall recital, but never once showed up for my debate finals. At a red light, I glanced at the car clock. It blinked 9:17 p.m. That drive home unraveled something in me, a slow unraveling, like a sweater you barely tug at, and suddenly the whole sleeve's gone. I thought I'd buried most of those memories, but the way they laughed again, like I was still 17, still the extra kid who didn't fit the mold, that pulled it all back. And so I remembered. It was the last week of summer. I just turned 17. The night before I left for college, I packed my things in silence. No party, no family dinner, just me and a half-full suitcase that reeked of cedar from the old closet. My scholarship packet sat at the foot of the bed. Full ride Ivy League, signed, sealed. No one asked to see it. I kept waiting for someone to say, "We're proud of you." Or even, "Do you need help getting there?" But the house stayed busy in other ways. Kane was back from his senior trip in Cancun, complaining about customs. Celine was ordering prints of her latest photo shoot. Mireille, ever the planner, was prepping for a neighbor's garden brunch. No one packed a lunch. No one hugged me goodnight. That morning, I woke before the sun. The hallway creaked under my footsteps, but the bedrooms were still dark. I stood outside their doors a minute longer than I should have, just in case someone would wake up and say goodbye. No one did. I took my suitcase, my dorm box, and a foldable garment bag. Caught the 6:05 a.m. bus from Westport to Stamford. Switched at the station. Then again near New Haven. 3 buses later, I stood outside a campus full of strangers hugging tearful parents and parents snapping pictures with brand new iPhones. I paid the driver in cash. Dragged my stuff to the dorm alone. No one saw me arrive. No one waved from a car. No welcome signs taped to the door. Room 314 smelled like plastic mattress covers and industrial carpet. My roommate's side was already decorated. Twinkle lights, a shelf of framed photos, a small coffee maker. She sat on her bed, legs tucked under her, on a video call with her mom, showing off the room. Her mom waved at me through the screen. I waved back. I unpacked in silence. Just me and a box of instant noodles and a spiral notebook. I took out a pen and wrote across the first page. Day 1, self-sponsored. I didn't cry, I didn't sulk, but I didn't forget. A few days before that departure, I had come downstairs to the sound of my parents arguing. Their voices were low but sharp, one of those hissing fights that lived between gritted teeth and clenched jaws. "I told you we can't afford that right now," my father said. "We weren't even supposed to have a fourth. She was an accident, Mireille." I froze in place. The word landed like a slap, not just unexpected, but undeniable. An accident. That was what I was. I backed up before they saw me, climbed the stairs slowly, like the air had thickened and every breath weighed more than it should. I sat on my bed, staring at the scholarship folder. I had earned every penny, every paper, every late night studying until my eyes burned. And still, it wasn't enough to be wanted. And that sentence didn't fade with time. It rooted in me. I never told them I heard it. Years later, when my mother would introduce me to someone and say, "This is our youngest, Verity's always been so independent," I'd smile, but in my head, I'd replace independent with unplanned. Back in the present, I sat at the same dinner table, listening to Celine boast about her Ridgefield exhibit and Kane joke about some new stock strategy he claimed he invented. My accomplishments, invisible. My presence, tolerated. They joked about me taking the bus, like it was still some funny quirk. They didn't know those bus rides built me. They didn't know I studied on those buses, ate lunch on them, slept during those 90-minute commutes to stretch my rent money further. The bus wasn't just transportation, it was my classroom, my office, my escape. No, they didn't know, and I had stopped expecting them to. Celine raised her glass in a self-congratulatory toast. "Here's to moving forward," she said with a smirk. "New shows, new successes, and staying ahead." I raised mine, too, but not for her. In my head, I toasted the 17-year-old who carried her entire future on public transportation and still made it through the doors of an Ivy League with her head up. The 17-year-old who never got a goodbye. They didn't know I built my life on those bus rides. After dinner, I left the Langdon house in the same quiet way I had arrived. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't leave a dramatic line hanging in the air. I simply walked out, keys in hand, ignoring the way Kane called after me with that smug chuckle that always meant he thought he'd won something. It was still early, just after 9. The sky had turned a soft charcoal, stars barely peeking through the haze above Westport. I drove in silence, letting the memory of the evening slide off me like oil off skin. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water, set my handbag on the entryway table, and opened my laptop to check work emails. I wasn't really reading them. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind had already gone elsewhere. It wasn't the first time they'd made me feel small, but this time, something settled differently. The last time I'd truly tried to be part of that family was 2 years ago, when my father had his heart procedure. I remember the call from Mireille. She'd been calm, composed, her voice distant even then. "Your father's going into surgery tomorrow. It's minor. Kane already called 911, so he handled the immediate stuff. We'll keep you posted." No urgency, no invitation. Still, I went, quietly. I showed up to Stamford General the next morning, coffee in hand, sitting in the waiting room while Kane checked his stocks on his phone and Celine flipped through a magazine. They didn't notice I was there until the nurse said, "His daughter already took care of the bill." And even then, no one asked which daughter. The truth, I had paid it through a legal trust linked to my firm. I didn't want their attention. I just didn't want my dad stressing about hospital invoices on top of a weakened heart. A week later, we had dinner at Mireille's house. She stood to toast with a glass of Chardonnay and said, "To Kane, our hero, for calling the ambulance right on time. You probably saved his life." I looked down at my plate, the chicken breast already gone cold. Rhett nodded like a bobblehead. Celine wiped a tear. No one looked at me. It wasn't that they didn't see me. It was that they saw what they wanted, the version of me that fit their story. And in that version, I was background. But things had a way of slipping through. Like last month, when I borrowed Mireille's phone to find a picture of a property she once mentioned. Something strange caught my eye. A WhatsApp group. Langdon Core. I clicked. Kane, Rhett, Celine, Mireille. Not me. Not even a placeholder. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd removed me. On purpose. That was the part that stung more than the hospital bill, more than the photo on the fireplace where I'd been cropped out. This was a curated exclusion, and it wasn't an accident. I remember scrolling through the messages, vacation plans, inside jokes, family-only Sunday dinners I'd never been told about. A shared Google Doc titled Mom's 70th Speech Assignments. Kane had a whole paragraph. Celine was set to do a photo montage. There was no mention of me, not even a task, not even a joke at my expense. I set the phone down without a word. Later, at dinner, I caught Mireille glancing over a second too long at my plate. "It's always interesting," I said, voice calm. "What gets remembered, and what's edited out?" She blinked, just once, then passed the bread basket to Kane, as if she hadn't heard me, but she had. I saw it in the tightness of her jaw, the twitch of her wine glass as she raised it. They always heard me, they just didn't respond unless my words matched the script. Back at home now, sitting on my sofa, I stared at my inbox. One email sat unread at the top. From Ridgefield Academy Alumni Office. Subject, Verity Lorne, Legacy Gala Invitation. I clicked. Dear Miss Lorne, we are honored to invite you as our featured alumna speaker at this year's Legacy Gala. We believe your achievements exemplify the core values of Ridgefield excellence. Would you be willing to share your journey with our students and families? My finger hovered over the delete key. For a second, the old reflex returned. Why speak when no one listens? But something stopped me. A flicker. Not of ego, of clarity. This time, I wasn't being invited because of my last name. Not because someone else vouched for me. Not because Kane or Celine put in a word. They wanted me, just me. I didn't delete the email. I didn't reply either. I just let it sit there like a seed in soil, waiting for the right moment. Maybe it was time I stopped trying to be part of their version of family and started showing up as the woman I had built. Bus rides, missed toasts, deleted group chats, and all. I didn't respond to the gala invitation that night. I didn't need to. Not yet. It was enough to know someone, somewhere, saw value in my story without needing it filtered through the Langdon name. A few mornings later, I stepped into a networking brunch in Midtown Manhattan, a low-lit room humming with the polite tension of business cards and quiet competition. I was there for a panel on real estate resilience post-recession, but I didn't even make it to the coffee station before someone intercepted me. Verity, right? She was tall, well-dressed, probably in her mid-50s, with manicured hands and a practiced smile that said she'd attended more galas than weddings. I nodded, bracing myself for the inevitable real estate small talk, but she leaned in slightly, her voice dipping into familiarity. So, you're the one who married up, huh? The words hung in the air like perfume turned sour. I blinked. I'm sorry? Oh, she laughed, like I'd caught her mid-gossip. Celine mentioned something. How lucky you were to find someone with the kind of backing that lets you play in the investment world. I mean, women like us. We know how the game works, right? I stood there for a moment too long, not out of shock, but out of strategy. I'd learned that letting someone's words settle into silence often said more than any rebuttal could. Eventually, I smiled. I suppose some people assume what they can't explain. She chuckled again, clearly not catching the warning in my tone, and moved toward the croissant tray. I didn't stay for the panel. I slipped out, walked a few blocks to a quiet park, and sat on a bench with my hands folded in my lap. Celine's words weren't surprising. She'd always been good at planting rumors in ways that left her hands clean. She didn't lie outright. She just implied, suggested, positioned. Later that evening, back at my apartment, I opened her social feed. The latest caption read, "Feeling blessed every day for a husband who never makes me worry about money. Some of us really hit the jackpot." The comments were predictable. Clapping emojis, "You deserve it," hearts. Among them, one stood out. "Wish my sister could find a man like that. Maybe then she'd stop pretending she's the breadwinner." She didn't tag me. She didn't have to. This wasn't new. Back when I graduated college, I remember walking across that massive stage, my name announced as Veronica Langford. Not even close. I paused at center stage, long enough for the photographer to snap the mandatory shot, then continued walking. Somewhere in the crowd, I could hear laughter. Not because of the mistake, but because Mireille had spent the entire ceremony complaining about the seating. They'd been placed behind a column. Afterward, in the parking lot, Mireille had said with a sigh, "At least they didn't butcher Celine's name last year. That would have been a nightmare." I smiled, said nothing, just tucked the program with my wrong name into my purse and tossed it in the trash when I got home. The family had always been meticulous about appearances. Celine's clean, curated image was just an extension of that. So if I didn't fit the narrative, they rewrote it. Or worse, replaced it. The next family brunch was at Kane's. The weather was good, so we sat out back. The wine was flowing, and the charcuterie board was more about aesthetic than appetite. Kane, always the performer, leaned back in his chair and said, "So, Verity, how's your mystery boyfriend? Or is he still top secret, or just imaginary?" Laughter erupted again, like a reflex. I glanced at Celine. She didn't laugh, but she didn't stop it either. I placed my glass down gently. I earned every cent of what I have, I said, my voice even, almost warm. Unlike some people at this table, who just know how to claim things they didn't build. The laughter stopped. Kane blinked. Rhett suddenly found interest in his phone. Celine's smile faltered, but only slightly. Murray, ever the fixer, jumped in. Verity, sweetheart, we were just teasing. No need to take things so seriously. Of course, I said. That's the Langdon way, right? Everything's a joke until someone calls it what it is. Silence followed, thick and awkward. I excused myself soon after, claiming an early morning meeting. No one offered to walk me out. Back in the car, I didn't turn on music. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there for a while, letting the weight of the moment sink in. That wasn't the first time they'd mocked me, but it was the first time I let them sit in the discomfort of being called out. Let them simmer. I was done being their doormat with a diploma. It started at a Women in Finance summit on the Upper East Side, a crisp, early Thursday in October. I was invited to moderate a panel on cross-market strategy. I'd done these things a dozen times. Shook hands, smiled politely, played nice. The panel before mine was running long, so I stepped into the side lounge to grab a coffee. The room buzzed with polished confidence. Armani blazers, pointed toe pumps, lanyards that screamed influence. I wasn't planning to sit through another pitch, but a young woman in tailored navy stood near the fireplace, confidently walking a small group through a presentation. Her voice was calm, pacing sharp. She passed out summaries, nodding toward key sections. I only caught a few phrases at first. Decoupling long-term reallocation, target sector buffers, investor flight simulations. The wording snagged something in my brain. I moved closer. There it was. My sentence. Not inspired by, not paraphrased. Mine. Every turn of phrase, every graph structure. The same executive summary I had drafted 2 years ago. The one I'd sent to Kane after he begged for input on a proposal he was working on. He said he just needed someone to proof it. Just give it a glance, V, he had texted. Need a second set of eyes. Now it was being presented, word for word, by a woman I didn't recognize, under his firm's name. She thanked the crowd and passed around printed copies. I took one. The header read, Langdon Maddox Investments, Thought Paper Series, Vol. 3. Kane hadn't just used my work. He'd published it, and he'd given it to someone else to present. I didn't storm out. I didn't cause a scene. I folded the paper neatly, tucked it into my leather tote, walked back into the main room, and took my place on stage when they called my name. That night, after I kicked off my heels and reheated leftovers, I scanned the document, line by line. It was mine. All of it. I printed a copy, marked it up with my original drafts, and filed it under a folder titled, Quiet War, Phase 1. 2 days later, I drove to the Langdon house. It was late afternoon. The sun was soft and low, slanting golden through the trees. I hadn't been inside since the night of that ridiculous dinner. The front door was open. Murray was in the kitchen, arranging flowers. Jake's voice carried in from the living room. I'm just saying, if the deed's already under your name and Dad's, why not just sign it over? It's not like Verity lives here. I've got a baby coming. She's got an apartment in the city and a job that pays more than Kane's ego. She doesn't need it. Verity's done well, Muriel replied, her tone dismissive. She'll understand. We'll explain it. I stepped in. No need. I heard everything. They froze. Jake stood up too fast, knocking a coaster off the coffee table. Murray turned toward me, mouth already twisting into that weary maternal expression she wore when she didn't want to be challenged, but knew she would be. You don't knock now? She asked. Apparently I'm not part of the house anymore. Why should I treat it like home? Jake shrugged. Look, it's just a house. No, Jake, I said, voice low, controlled. It's not just a house. It's the house I paid half the mortgage on when Dad almost lost it after the market crash. It's the house I covered the back taxes on when Kane forgot to pay. It's the house you want to inherit because you think having a baby earns you real estate. Muriel stepped in. That's enough, Verity. Don't make this ugly. I didn't make it anything. I'm simply not letting you give away something that isn't yours. You're being selfish, she said. Jake has a family to provide for. So did I once, I snapped. Mine was me. No one else ever provided for it. The room grew thick with silence. Jake folded his arms. What are you gonna do? Sue your own parents? I looked straight at him. If you transfer the title without my consent, I'll file an injunction before the ink dries. I'll sue you, Mom, Dad, the notary, and whoever signs that paperwork. Murray gasped. How dare you? How dare I? You stole my work. You erased my name. You tried to reallocate property I helped secure so you could prop up your golden boys. I dare, because I'm done asking for respect. Kane wasn't there, but I knew he'd get the message soon enough. Jake looked stunned, as if I had flipped the script so fast he hadn't learned his lines. Muriel shook her head, voice shaking. You're not being reasonable. No, I said. I'm being legal. With that, I pulled out my phone and stepped outside. The air had chilled slightly. I leaned against the railing and called Marla. When she picked up, I didn't waste a breath. Get the paperwork ready, I said. I want a full audit. The week after I asked Marla to prepare the audit, I received a text from a former colleague. Kane's wedding photos are up. You might want to see this. There was no link, no explanation, just enough to sting. It was late evening, a quiet Thursday. I'd just wrapped a call with a new client and was pouring myself a glass of Pinot when curiosity got the better of me. I opened social media and typed Kane's wife's name into the search bar. There they were, dozens of filtered, perfect photos. The venue caught my eye first, a rustic estate in Litchfield Hills, stone arches, sweeping lawns, candlelit barn reception. My stomach sank. I knew that property because I'd helped save it. Years ago, after Dad's business imploded and they faced foreclosure on their summer home, I transferred funds directly into their joint account. No conditions, no questions, just a quiet call to the mortgage company confirming the payment. That payment had the same timestamp as the deposit receipt pinned to the estate's booking confirmation, publicly shared in the wedding album. They used my money, my help, and they never invited me. Not a forgotten RSVP, not a mix-up. An intentional exclusion, one more framed memory I didn't exist in. I closed the browser and leaned back. The wine was untouched. I let the silence settle. If there was any hesitation left in me, that sealed it. The next family dinner wasn't at Kane's. It was back at Mireille's, under the pretense of finally getting everyone together. She called it casual, said she was making her famous lemon chicken. I showed up wearing black, blouse, trousers, flats. Simple. Sharp. I parked my car at the shopping center a block away. On purpose, dinner started the same as always. Too much wine, too much noise. Celine went on about a potential gallery collaboration in Brooklyn. Rhett made a snide remark about zoning laws. Kane, as usual, dominated the conversation, laughing louder than necessary. And then he turned to me. Hey V, he said, grinning. Still cruising around in that mystery car of yours, or are you back to bus life? Celine giggled. If I had to guess, I'd say Uber X. Kane raised his glass. Hope it still runs on those bus passes. That was it. I pushed back my chair. They all stopped. I stood slowly, my voice calm, controlled. You're right, I said, meeting Kane's eyes. Want to see what that bus pass paid for? Celine blinked. Rhett straightened in his seat. Murray narrowed her eyes. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out the front door. The night air was cool, almost gentle. I walked steadily down the block, heels clicking against the pavement. I could hear them behind me, confused voices, hurried footsteps. Someone said, "Where is she going?" They followed, exactly as I wanted. At the corner, I paused beside the curb, reached into my bag, and tapped the key fob. A soft beep echoed into the quiet street. The headlights lit up in a slow, deliberate glow. The Rolls-Royce shimmered under the street lamp. Silence behind me. I turned around. Mireille's mouth hung slightly open. Kane's jaw tightened, eyes darting between the car and me. Celine looked like she'd swallowed glass. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I walked over, opened the driver's side door, slid in, and started the engine. The hum was smooth, deep, and unmistakable. I reversed slowly, then pulled forward until I reached the group still frozen on the sidewalk. I rolled down the window. "This old thing?" I said, nodding toward the dashboard. "It's nothing compared to what I actually own." Mireille spoke first. "Verity, how—" I didn't answer, just smiled. Tight, composed. Then I pulled away. As I glanced into the rearview mirror, they were still standing there, statues on the front lawn of their curated world, and I had just shattered the frame. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the office. It was almost 9 p.m., but I had things to review. The building was quiet, dimly lit by the city's halo. I made myself a cup of tea in the break room, sat at my desk, and opened the folder marked Langdon Disbursement, Phase 2. Kane's theft, the mortgage deed, the misallocated wedding funds. It was all there now, labeled, documented, time-stamped. They thought I wouldn't fight. They didn't expect me to remember. They underestimated how long I'd been preparing, because while they were busy laughing, I was building a case. Let them find out what real quiet looks like when it's used for power. They laughed when they thought I was beneath them. Let's see if they're still laughing now. The calls started while I was still in the parking garage, walking toward my car in heels that had started to bite at my toes. I'd barely slipped into the driver's seat when the first buzz came through. Then another. Then 2 more. I let the screen light up, fade, light up again. 42 missed calls in under an hour, mostly from no-caller ID, but I knew who they were. I knew that kind of panic. It only came after you'd watched the room turn on you. And that ballroom had turned hard. 3 hours earlier, I stood outside the Westport Town Hall, staring up at the building I hadn't entered in years. It still had the same colonial facade, the same chipped paint on the pillars that no one ever got around to fixing. Inside, the chandelier gleamed above a room full of local donors, school board members, alumni, reporters. The gala was for Ridgefield Academy's Women of Impact series. I hadn't even known I'd been nominated. Marla had done it behind the scenes. She called me the day before and said, "You don't need their permission to show up in this town anymore." I walked into the lobby alone, didn't need anyone holding my hand. The event coordinator handed me a folder with my name neatly printed across the top. This time, they spelled it right. Verity Lorne. I flipped it open and saw the words, Keynote Honoree. I could feel them watching me before I even spotted them. Mireille, Kane, Celine, clustered near the back, pretending not to care. I wasn't sure if the school had invited them directly or if someone tipped them off. Either way, they were there. Kane wore his smug, neutral expression, like he was attending out of politeness. Celine had on something off-white, probably hoping to be mistaken for the guest of honor. Mireille looked like she was trying to keep her composure for the sake of appearances, as if the gala was a charity case she'd agreed to show up for. I took my seat at the head table and listened as the principal welcomed the crowd. They spoke of growth, grit, resilience, all the usual lines. Then, it was my turn. I stepped onto the stage, adjusted the mic, and looked out into the crowd. I saw the mayor. I saw a reporter I knew from years back. I saw my family. I smiled. I spent years learning how to speak in rooms where I wasn't expected to speak at all. I began. A few polite nods. I wasn't the star athlete. I didn't win the art shows. I didn't bring home the certificates you hang on a refrigerator. But I showed up. I worked. I tried. Pause. I was told I was quiet, difficult, independent, which was code for she won't cause a scene when we leave her out. A quiet murmur. One woman put down her wine glass. I leaned in a little. But the thing is, I wasn't invisible. I was inconvenient. Until they needed my money. Or my silence. A full stop in the room. Kane shifted. Mireille went rigid. Celine's mouth tensed just slightly. I continued. When I got my first paycheck, I paid off a debt no one ever thanked me for. When they needed rent, I covered it. When the wedding venue had a non-refundable deadline, I wired the deposit. My name was never on a plaque, never in a toast. I smiled again, this time more softly. But that's okay, because tonight, it is. The audience clapped. The applause grew and grew. I looked toward the back of the room. Mireille stood up abruptly and walked out. Kane followed after a delay, pretending to be on his phone. Celine stayed seated, face frozen, too proud to leave, but too ashamed to clap. They didn't expect me to do it this way. They thought I'd scream, that I'd burn it all down, that I'd shame them publicly in the most brutal way possible, but I wasn't there to destroy them. I was there to take back my voice. After the dinner, the head of the alumni board unveiled a new donor wall. My name etched in gold. The Erica Lane Scholarship, founded by Verity Lorne. A scholarship in my grandmother's name. Marla helped set it up. It would go to girls like me. Girls who didn't get applause until they stopped asking for it. Girls who were written out of family photos but showed up in the world anyway. As the room slowly emptied, I walked out the side exit, heels in hand, coat over my arm. The night was crisp, stars brighter than they had a right to be. I reached my car and finally checked the calls. Voicemails. Messages. Verity, please call me back. That speech, I didn't know it would be like that. Verity, your mother is very upset. You made her look small. We should talk. It's not too late to fix this. Fix what exactly? This time, I wasn't the one left out. I just didn't let them in. Morning light filtered through the blinds of my apartment, casting soft stripes across the hardwood floor. I sat by the kitchen island, still in my robe, coffee cooling in my hand. My phone lay face down next to the mug. I already knew what waited there. The blinking screen, the missed calls, the apologies carefully worded, but too late to matter. 42 missed calls, 8 voicemails, dozens of text messages. We didn't know it meant that much. Let's talk, please. We didn't realize how that would look. All of it was noise now. Background static I'd finally learned to mute. I didn't reply. I didn't save the voicemails. I didn't forward them to Marla like I used to, hoping for her interpretation, for her to validate my pain. I deleted them all, clean. That afternoon, I received an email from Mireille. It was short, formal. We're having a family brunch this Sunday. No guests, no cameras, no speeches, just family. We'd love to see you. She signed it. Mom, like the words still held weight. I stared at it for a while, not out of indecision, out of acknowledgement, because a year ago, 6 months ago even, I would have agonized over that message, reread it, dissected every sentence, wondered if maybe, this time, it was real. But now I knew better. I typed my response slowly, deliberately. I wish you peace, but I don't wish to attend anymore. And I hit send. No emotion, no ache, just a calm resolve I hadn't known was possible. 2 days later, I stood in the office of the Erica Lane Scholars Foundation. Sunlight poured in through the tall windows, warming the exposed brick and the row of framed success stories lining the walls. Young women, bright-eyed, brave-hearted, many of them the first in their families to go to college. 3 of the newest scholars sat across from me, nervous, polite, eager. One of them, a girl with tight curls and glasses too big for her face, leaned forward. Did your family support you when you started? It was an honest question, no malice, just curiosity. I smiled, not out of bitterness, out of truth. They do now, I said, just not the ones I was born into. There was no confusion in her eyes, only understanding. After they left, I walked the hall alone. My heels clicked against the tile with a rhythm that felt like mine. The space didn't echo with doubt anymore. It was filled with purpose, with voices that knew their own value. Later that evening, I had to drive through Westport on my way to a dinner meeting. My GPS took me past the old house, the Langdon house. The lights were on. Someone had planted mums by the front walkway. The porch had a new swing. A child's bicycle lay on the lawn, probably Jake's kid. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just glanced once, then kept going. That place didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe it never had. Closure didn't come from their regret. It came from my choice to stop chasing it. At a red light near the edge of town, I rolled down the window. The fall air smelled like damp leaves and clean slate. I breathed it in. I didn't hate them, but I didn't need them. And for the first time, I realized maybe they needed me more than I ever needed them. Maybe one day they'll understand what they lost, but I won't be waiting to hear it. Sometimes, the hardest door to close is the one you kept open the longest, for people who never deserve to walk through it. This story isn't just about revenge or a luxury car. It's about boundaries, about knowing when to stop explaining yourself to those who never cared to understand. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this hit close to home, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories just like this.